There are much too many facets to what is currently taking place, as well as far too many precedents from history. As a result, we're going to share them with you. Hey guys, welcome to our channel FinanceX. In today's video, we are going to talk how to be prepared for the changing world order. Let's see what we have for you. If you want to find out more about it, then stay with us until the end of the video. Also, before we start the video, don't forget to hit like, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell icon for more amazing videos. And let's get started. Countries often align into opposing factions, e.g. the Allied and Axis countries in World War II, or remain neutral in battles and wars for control of the international order, as history teaches and as current events demonstrate. This occurred on a global scale throughout the first half of the 20th century, and it was particularly true during World War II, when the West and the East became more intertwined. A similar squaring off into coalitions is now beginning to appear. Economic strain and conflicts, i.e. economic sanctions, between states can become increasingly acute to the point of being unacceptable, resulting in military warfare, as detailed in my book's World War II example. For example, Americans put restrictions against Japan, such as suspending Japan's oil imports until they ran out, and blocking Japanese financial assets forced Japan to choose between submitting or fighting, leading to the attack on Pearl Harbor, which drew the United States into the military conflict. In today's short film, I'll highlight some early signs of countries clustering into one of two camps or remaining neutral. The table was created by observing their actions. It is self-evident, in this increasingly bipolar world, those closer to the top are more aligned on one side, those closer to the bottom are more aligned to the other side, and those in the middle are more neutral. While they are primarily rankings, they are more precise than designations such as NATO countries. Consider Turkey's ranking, which is a NATO member, but not totally aligned with other NATO members in its operations. Of course, the Russian-Ukraine crisis has a big influence, but if you look at most viewpoints on most issues, the picture is similar. It not only identifies who is on which side, but it also assists us in imagining what commodities, services, and financial assets those countries lower on the list might bring into Russia, while those from countries higher on the list are being pushed out. In this way, we may begin to picture whether sanctions will ruin Russia or whether it will be able to overcome them, as well as how powerful the US sanctions weapon will be, which is key to determining how powerful the US will be. No one wants to use sanctions because they are the United States' most unique and potent weapon, and since the military weapons of the major nations appear to be about similar in their ability to inflict mutually assured destruction. Russia and China have superior hypersonic weapons, revealing the effectiveness of US-led sanctions and whether opposing countries will treat the US and other countries equally. Importantly, if the sanctions war escalates, other countries and investors may fear being sanctioned, which could have a significant impact on the willingness to hold dollar assets. This situation, like the Suez Crisis for the British Empire and the British pound, will reflect the US's power and affect the desirability of holding the world's leading reserve currency and debt denominated in it. As already said, the external war cycle and signs of our current position suggest that we may be on the approach of a military clash between the great powers. But this appears impossible because it would be such an obvious step toward a tragedy that no one wants. To be clear, I do not believe that the military clash between the major powers is imminent. I believe that all parties desire to avoid a catastrophe, e.g. nuclear war. And I have witnessed countless conflicts that have brought us to the brink of war, starting with the Cuban Missile Crisis, and then retreated simultaneously. I believe that the big powers have irreconcilable existential disagreements over which they may fight to the death or play chicken to see who blinks first. As a result, I believe we are in a high-risk situation and will learn a great deal in the next weeks. Most importantly, we will very certainly learn in the near future whether or not there will be a solution, and if there is, whether Putin or the NATO countries will triumph. That settlement, in our judgment, will either be a victory for Putin, given that it will offer Putin a regime change in Ukraine and reasonable conditions in Russia, or a loss for Putin, given that it will give Putin a regime change in Ukraine and tolerable conditions in Russia, by which I mean no regime change and sanctions that cripple Russia. Of course, the current talks are seeking to make the agreement appear less clearly a win or a defeat for either party. While what happens will be momentous, it will not be the end of Putin's feud with the top powers, nor will it be the end of the struggle between the top and bottom powers. These conflicts are most likely just beginning. To put it another way, I feel it is doubtful that both sides will return to peaceful coexistence. Hence, I believe a European war will continue as part of a huge worldwide conflict. Whether there will be a major escalation if there is no agreement, such as Russia threatening nuclear war and Western powers threatening more severe sanctions. If there is no agreement, I believe that there will be a significant escalation. Because the current route is unsustainable, I believe it won't be long before we find out what occurs. What the countries at the bottom of the list, those closer to Russia, particularly the Chinese, will do, and what the Americans will do in response to their actions. This is significant for several reasons. Most importantly, we'll see how much people on the bottom of the list will disregard the sanctions and continue to support Russia. My estimate is a lot, as well as what the American response will be if they don't do what the Americans want. That was the subject of the heated debate in Rome between the American and the Chinese teams. Also, the situation with Russia and Ukraine, as well as the situation with China and Taiwan, must be closely studied, as having wars on two fronts at the same time is a common approach in history. To be clear, I do not anticipate China becoming more active on the Taiwan issue in the near future. All parties, I believe, want a peaceful conclusion to the Ukraine and Taiwan conflicts, but what I'm saying is that these kinds of tit-for-tat escalations must be avoided. I believe they have a considerably higher than typical chance of occurring. How successful the sanctions imposed by the United States will be, and what this means for the United States and its allies. The US sanctions capabilities appear to be fantastic right now, but they will be put to the test. Right now, US-led sanctions appear to be working, but they will be put to the test by Russia's ability to adapt, as well as what countries on the lower end of the list do, such as whether India and China replace the things and parts that are being pulled from Russia. They are particularly effective against Russia, which requires almost all imports. There is, however, much to see. I have a lot of questions that I'm hoping to get answered to just watching what's going on. For example, I'm curious if Russia payments for Chinese goods and Chinese loans to Russia will be made in CNY via the Chinese clearing system rather than dollars via the US Western Control Payment System. Saudi Arabia in particular will begin to accept payments in Chinese money for its oil. Will this become increasingly the case for the countries at the bottom of the list, as China's currency becomes the preferred currency of those countries at the bottom of the list, and as these countries become more concerned about sanctions? Would this force them to reconsider their asset holdings, such as holding fewer US debt assets such as bonds and reallocating them? It should, according to logic. We'll have to wait and see how things turn out. What will happen to these countries on both sides of the conflict in retaliation to the countries that are neutral? As has been stated during this war and throughout history, there are three categories of countries: those on one side of a conflict, those on the opposite side, and those who are neutral. History indicates that neutral countries and their markets fare best during wars until the winning is determined, and logic explains why. And this is it for today, guys. What are your thoughts on today's video? Share with us in the comments below. Also, don't forget to hit like, subscribe to our channel, and ring the bell icon so you don't miss any of the latest updates. And thank you for watching.